Well, welcome to our viewers here in Nigeria and around the world. You're watching The World Today. Here's what's coming up. 6 people presumed dead in Baltimore bridge collapse as U.S. President Joe Biden describes the incident as a terrible accident. Plus, thousands protest in Hungary after former government inside leaks. Audio recording alleging top officials are corrupt. The World Today starts now. To the United States now, where at least 6 people have now been reported missing and presumed dead in the Baltimore bridge collapse. U.S. President Joe Biden described the collapse on Tuesday night as a terrible accident. He said there's no reason to believe the incident was intentional. Just refresh your memory, a container ship slammed into a support pier of the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore Tuesday morning, sending the whole span crashing into the river. As search and rescue operations continue, the accident could mark a major blow to the East Coast economy, with all shipping traffic shut down in the nearby port of Baltimore.
At about 1:30, a container ship struck the Francis Scott Key Bridge, which I've been over many, many times, commuting from the state of Delaware, either on a train or by car. I've been in Baltimore Harbor many times. And the bridge collapsed, sending several people in vehicles into the water, into the river. Officials at the scene estimate 8 people were unaccounted for were unaccounted for. That number might change. 2 have been rescued, 1 without injury, and 1 in critical condition. And the search and rescue operation is continuing for all those remaining as we speak. I told them we're going to send all the federal resources they need as we respond to this emergency. And I mean all the federal resources. And we're going to rebuild that port together. Everything so far indicates that this was a terrible accident. At this time, we have no other indication, no other reason to believe there's any intentional act here. Personnel on board the ship were able to alert the Maryland Department of Transportation that they had lost control of their vessel, as you all know and reported. As a result, local authorities were able to close the bridge to traffic before the bridge was struck, which undoubtedly saved lives. Here's what's happening now. The search and rescue operation is our top priority. Ship traffic in the Port of Baltimore has been suspended until further notice, and we'll need to clear that channel before the ship traffic can resume. The Army Corps of Engineers is on the spot and is going to help lead this effort to clear the channel. My Transportation Secretary is there now. As I told Governor Moore, I've directed my team to move heaven and earth to reopen the port and rebuild the bridge as soon as humanly possible. And we're going to work hand in hand with the support of Maryland to support Maryland whatever they ask for. And we're going to work with our partners in Congress to make sure the state gets the support it needs. It's my intention that the federal government will pay for the entire cost of reconstructing that bridge. And I expect the Congress to support my effort.
Joining us now is Global Affairs Analyst Edward Okpa. He's in Texas. Edward, thank you for joining us this hour. Let me ask you straight out the gate, do you agree or disagree with U.S. officials who've been speaking before now, saying that this was not a terrorist attack?
Thank you for having me. This thing happened maybe 20, 30 hours ago. So the FBI, special agent in charge for that area, has come up to say that so far they don't have any information to indicate it was a terrorist act. So far we're going to have to go with that information. And then as the investigation unravels, maybe it will reveal that maybe something intentional. But makes you wonder, how could a shipping channel like that don't have all the sensors, indicate when a ship is running adrift and where it's going to hit a bridge column and then cause this sort of damage. But usually when things happen, then what we do, we go back to the drawing board and begin to have all these safety measures in order to prevent stuff like this. So thank God it happened early in the morning on Tuesday. When traffic was less, and then there was a response team to have blocked the bridge so that there wasn't much traffic. The loss of life, even if it's one due to accident of this type, is hard, feeling. And we're going to do what we have to do in order to get back to business.
The entire bridge is down, and I'm just trying to follow up on what you said. What could have happened What could have been done to have prevented, this from happening? Sensors on the bridge with a ship that has lost control, ship captain calling for help. How could this have been avoided?
Well, the way you can do, we have sensors. You could have sensors in the water, as part of this shipping channel, because like airplanes have their own path when they fly, roadways, same thing in the water. You have to stay within certain distance of the bridge column. So those sensors could have been in there. So when a ship is running adrift, taking off or veering off that path, then the sensors will be triggered to show it's heading towards something like, the column of a bridge. How you do that distance, you could do it half a mile or whatever the distance is, so that before it gets there, and then the ship would have dropped the anchor or something would have been done to prevent, or then you have a buffer that can rise, around the column to prevent, to minimize or sort of soften the impact. There's a technology for it, so we're going to get back to that. And because it's happened on the Mississippi River, it's happened on so many other rivers, just like train derailment. But again, it goes to make us go back to drawing board and then see what technology we have to have. Usually it's a sensor factor. And, being able to time the distance from where the impact is likely to be.
Possibly those sensors were not put there because it's a really old bridge, and I'm imagining that it
Yes.
is a major icon in Maryland itself, joining cities, helping to traverse different states, and I'm sure that the collapse would have impacted on the transportation sector. Could you explain to our viewers how important this bridge was, especially to the port of Baltimore?
Well, I mean, the bridge is 1 point something miles, some kilometers. So it's a long bridge and it's a connecting bridge that links, part of Maryland and then the ship channel. So what's going to happen now is that's going to be our alternative route, within that will go around, that will make it longer for people to get from one point to the other. But, the route is there. It's just that the bridge made the distance shorter. You just go from one end to the other. Again, this is something that, nobody saw, happening. I wouldn't say thank God that it happened, but we're going to go back and look at infrastructure around the port and then see how to relieve this stuff. There might even be a ferry, for now, moving people from one end to the other.
I'm sure the people are really upset about what has happened. I mean, you're in faraway Texas, and you already have, these feelings and opinions about, what could have happened. Here you are talking about censors. So I'm sure the people even of Maryland are just as frustrated as anybody else about what has happened, probably blaming this on the government.
Of course, I mean, a bridge is not a private thing. Again, the waterways, the president mentioned the Army Corps of Engineers. In America, the Army Corps of Engineers have the responsibility over our, inland waterways. So they're going to go back and see what it is they're going to have to do. And then the NTSB, the National Transportation Safety Board, are going to do their investigation. Again, it's a sensor thing, it's a road thing. Transportation corridor, we have to go in and look at when a ship is on that channel. If it starts to veer off, its path, we need to be able to, tell people ahead of time, maybe half a mile, because the ship with all the cargo is a heavy weight, and you can't just stop it. If you listen to the news, the captain dropped to the anchor, but it was already too close, to the column, and he couldn't do anything because the ship was already, gliding. The force of the weight and the river was pushing it. So if we have this sensor, there could be something like a buffer that will just pop up and sort of, soften the impact. So, this is the things that happened. Everything we enjoy today happened because of some accident in the past that made us go back and change how certain things happen.
Does that technology exist in the U.S., possibly on other bridges and other infrastructure in the U.S. where you have sensors coming up to help deviate an impending catastrophe?
No, we don't, because we have major rivers. Like I say, we have Mississippi, we have Ohio. This is really a shipping channel. Most of the other rivers we have had barges. Like on Mississippi, we have barges that collided with bridge support and caused a lot of damage. So, the Army Corps of Engineers is the ones that have, control over these rivers. They are constantly doing something. But this is major. This is the first time that, the bridge on a shipping channel, collapsed. And now it's causing economic hardship because I think something like $10 million a day is going to be lost until, the bridge is rebuilt.
Edward, thanks again for joining us on The World Today.
Thank you for having me, and then good luck to you.
We're on to other stories now. Thousands of people have been on the streets of Budapest joining an anti-government protest following accusations that members of the government had interfered in a corruption case and falsified documents. The demonstrations come after a tape recording leaked by former government insider Peter Magyar, alleging top officials are corrupt in a big blow to Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban's government. The protesters demanded the resignation of Mr. Orban as well as his chief prosecutor. The nationalist leader, who's ruled since 2010, is facing one of the strongest public challenges to his tightening grip on power. Hungary's largest protest in years erupted in early February when it was revealed that the president had issued a pardon to a man in prison for covering up child sexual abuses by the director of a state-run orphanage. Close allies of the Prime Minister, including the President and then Justice Minister Judith Varga, were forced to resign in the face of public outrage. Back on the continent, in Senegal now, people have made a decision to break away from the past by putting their bets on presidential candidate Bassirou Diomaye Faye. He was relatively an unknown figure outside his opposition party, PASTEF, until recently. Everything changed for him when firebrand party leader Ousmane Sonko was convicted and barred from running in elections to succeed President Macky Sall. Faye, a former tax inspector, was arrested in April 2023 and charged with contempt of court and defaming magistrates. He denied the charges, but his arrest came a few months before his mentor was also held. When Sonko's candidacy and eligibility grew uncertain, several party members, including Faye, put their names forward. Faye eventually made the cut while still in prison. Our correspondent, Kayla Megwa, explained just a while ago why Faye, who is set to become Africa's youngest elected president, did so successfully in the polls.
To really understand Diomaye Faye's success in these polls, you have to go back to what led, to the situation that we're in right now, the lead up to the elections. Mr. Faye is the chosen successor of Ousmane Sonko, who was, sent to prison for various charges, including inappropriate behavior with a person under the age of 21, and disqualified from the vote as a result. So Mr. Faye basically is carrying the support of this Ousmane Sonko, who is a very loved politician here in Senegal. And Mr. Faye is co-founder of the PASTEF party, which Ousmane Sonko heads. So that support from the opposition has been on his back, and that is something that he's done this campaign with, and it has turned out to be successful. Mr. Faye has been responsible for many protests against the government. Remember, he's a tax man, a very grassroots man, 44 years old, 2 wives. There's a report about him going to the village every weekend to till the land. He is one of those people who, sees himself as Pan-African and has a lot of Pan-African mentors and wants to move in the direction of Pan-Africanism. So he has a very strong, support from people who want to be able to consolidate on their growth and development as a people. So many young people are drawn to this man. He rode on, the support of, the the members of the now dissolved PASTEF party, and then of course with the support of young people, and the idea that he's bringing a new way of living, a new, something different from what they're used to. And for many people in Senegal, they do not think that the way things have been done has been beneficial to them, But there are sections of the population who are worried about, Mr. Faye's ability, to stand shoulder to shoulder with other presidents across the world, really, who have better experience. Remember, this man is considered an outsider. So how will he be able to handle governance? How is he going to deal, with other countries, and, who were colonized by the French? How is he going to deal with other world leaders? Will he be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with these people and insist on Senegal first? Can he actually handle world politics? These are some of the issues that we find, with some of the older population here in Senegal. But his success, remember, he was thrown in jail as well and released alongside his mentor, Mr. Sanko. Both of them were released just 2 weeks to the election. And, that's one thing that has, defined this election as a revolution election, where someone who had just 2 weeks to campaign, who just got out of jail, 2 weeks to campaign, was able to win the votes of the people. It basically means that the people had been waiting for him to get out of prison so they could cast their vote. So it feels like it was already a done deal. They were ready for this man. And the disenchantment, and nothing made it worse than outgoing President Macky Sall's attempt to extend his stay in office. Remember, that caused a lot of protests in Senegal. People lost their lives as a result of this, So that was basically the nail on the coffin for outgoing President Macky Sall. And whoever it is, Amadou Ba, who is his preferred successor, would have basically just continued in the footsteps of outgoing President Macky Sall. And that was something that people did not want. So, it was very easy for them to reject this new candidate, Amadou Ba, and put all their eggs in the basket that was brought by Diomaye Faye. So, that would explain a lot about how, he was able to be successful at the polls, even though he had such little time. The idea that the people feel disenchanted, wanting a more populist government, so to speak, one that represents their needs and wants and puts them in a place of pride. Remember, Senegal has been considered as one of the strongest democracies in West Africa.
Our correspondent Kayla Megwa in Dakar. Hey, thanks for staying with us on the program. Let's head now to Guinea-Bissau, where ex-President Malambakai's son, who bears the same name, has been sentenced to over 6 years in prison by a U.S. court for leading an international heroin trafficking ring. According to reports, 52-year-old Malambakai Sennar Jr. planned to use the proceeds to fund his ambitions to become president of Guinea-Bissau through a coup. He was extradited to the U.S. in August 2022 following his arrest in Tanzania a few weeks earlier. His trial began soon afterwards, and in September last year, he pleaded guilty to conspiring to illegally import drugs. Sennar Jr. has also been linked to the February 2022 foiled coup attempt. His father was Guinea-Bissau's leader from 2009 until his death in 2012. A court in Tunisia has sentenced 4 people to death, 2 others to life imprisonment on charges of participating in the murder of the prominent political leader Chokri Belaid in 2013. Belaid was found shot dead in his car in the capital, Tunis. The leftist politician had been a fierce critic of then-ruling Islamist Ennahda Party. He claimed it turned a blind eye to violence perpetrated by extremists against secularists. Although Tunisia hands out death sentences for the worst crimes, no executions have occurred since 1990. Instead, they're usually commuted to life terms. A total of 23 people have been charged in connection with Belaid's killing. The 2013 murders started up demonstrations from angry Tunisians 2 years after the pro-democracy Arab Spring uprising began in the country and spread everywhere in the Maghreb and in the Middle East. Well, here in Nigeria, the 2023 general elections may have come and gone, but review of the electoral process is far from over. The International Press Center, supported by the European Union, has been reviewing the process that produced today's leaders and the growing distrust by Nigerians in the elections. The multi-stakeholders dialogue held in Lagos, Nigeria. It's been a year since the last major elections were held in Nigeria. And observers say, though there was a high number of registered voters, apathy and distrust ruled the days even after the polls.
National Broadcasting Commission, NBC.
Speaking to a spectrum of electoral officials, security agents, civil society groups and the media, Executive Director of the International Press Center, Larry Arugundade, opens the dialogue by highlighting the difficulty of conducting credible elections if trust in the electoral process is not re-established.
Among the questions that should agitators, as media and civil society organizations, as we engage in this deliberation today are, have we done enough to hold important stakeholders like the government, the political parties, the candidates, the security and law enforcement agencies, etc., accountable for their actions at elections in addition to INEC? In his lead presentation, Professor of African History, Peace and Conflict Studies of the Institute for Peace and Strategic Studies at the University of Ibadan, Professor Isaac Albert, in a mixture of humor and seriousness, painted a grim picture of what society would look like if leaders do not take the lead in addressing citizens' frustrations.
When you interact with an average Nigerian about the problems of the country, there is, a poor understanding of what is happening, and then a poor understanding of how to solve the problems. Those leaving the country, they sell their property, and then they go abroad to go and sleep on the streets. So, trust deficit, if allowed to fester for too long, leads to post-traumatic stress disorder.
He, however, debunks military leadership as a solution and wants people to face problems head-on.
As a scholar, I will tell you, the military is not the solution to your problem. When you allow the military to take over your political leadership, then you are in greater problems. And I think that is why a meeting of this nature is possible. Because what we're trying to do now is to reconnect the people with the realities of their being. The moment you depart from the realities of your existence, then you will join the lorry load of people coming to UCH every morning, having mental problems.
The dialogue holds months ahead of off-cycle elections in Edo and Ondo states, which will be a reflection of the impact of electoral process review. Finally on the program, thousands of Muslims gathered for a 270-meter-long iftar spread on Iran's largest pedestrian bridge in Tehran, marking the halfway point of the holy month of Ramadan. We're looking at people gathered around the spread, taking their seats and breaking their fast together under the evening sky. Director of Communications and Tourism, Mohammed Parsayan, said the gathering takes place annually in Ramadan and is open to both locals and tourists. The month of Ramadan is esteemed in the Islamic faith as a period of reverence and devotion, as the 9th month in the Islamic calendar. This annual observance entails devout prayers during the late evening and voluntary abstinence from food and drink throughout daylight hours. We hope we've inspired kindness in your next meal. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani.